Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 20 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with IT modernization programs and strategies in the federal government. With me on today's show are Brian Merrick, Deputy Director of Service Delivery Staff, Department of Justice; Luis Coronado Jr., Chief Information Officer, Bureau of Consular Affairs, Department of State; Ed Nzambi, Federal Business Strategic Advisor at Splunk; Scott Anderson, Distinguished Solutions Architect at Verizon; and Brian Meyer, Field Chief Technology Officer, Axonius Federal Systems. Brian happens to be 6'8", and since we have two Brians and he goes by Stretch, we're going to refer to him as Stretch on here and keep the panel members straight. But first, we're going to start with Brian Merrick. Brian, let's start with you. Let's give us a state of state. You've been there at Department of Justice, I think about 2.5 years, if I recall.
Yep.
Did a lot of great things over at State, brought a lot of those concepts over to Justice. I know you're on a tear over there. Give us a top line about how things are going.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Luke. First off, just appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone. And yeah, definitely, as you can imagine, our mission space is complex, a lot of moving parts, a lot of modernization to do. So, in my role, we really have that intersection of a lot of programmatic and enterprise activities. So, tried to leverage some of the cloud pieces and parts that I had picked up working at State, and apply that shared responsibility model here. So we have made a lot of progress over the last couple of years. Actually stood up multiple cloud platforms with that shared model. Each time we do that, it avoids about average of $2 million in costs for O&M of managing those underlying platforms, but it still allows our mission partners to manage their workload so they can have their direct relationships with their customers, manage their data, but then we take care of a large proportion of those management controls, security controls, sort of the underlayment, if you will, data connections, et cetera. So they can get into work a lot faster. So far to date, we've got 10 components with workloads running in those environments. Everything from law enforcement training systems and data visualization platforms, down to we even migrated our department financial system, as well as our personnel security system onto that platform. So it's given us some incredible cost savings and cost avoidance for new activities as well. It's also given us a great platform when we need to jump into doing custom applications to support larger programmatic activities across the interagency, especially anything that impacts the public. So it really gives us a lot more capability and capacity. We're running those things, sometimes serverless, which is great, and also being able to automate a lot of the underlying processes. So we're trying to now, extend that out through other legacy pieces. And as budget's available, we're working through that by priority. So definitely a lot of good work so far with the team, and still a lot of work to do.
Modernizing in a modern way, reducing costs and increasing velocity to those customers. What's not to love? I mean, that's exactly what anyone would expect. And hats off to you and the team for being able to get in there and start to turn that around very quickly. Luis, you've been at Department of State there, Consular Affairs, I think a couple of years now, right? Yeah, time goes by quickly. And boy, you came into a very complex environment, I think I'll call it that, and have done some incredible things over there. Give us the top line, maybe what you saw when you got there, state of the state as it is today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Luke. And again, thank you for the opportunity as well. So it's been approximately 2 years, just hit 2 years last month. Consular affairs is pretty varied in the sense that we have about 240 posts worldwide that our systems support, everything from visas to passports to overseas citizen services. So when I first got here, of course, getting the lay of the land and finding out where things were, it became apparent to me that, of course, there was a lot of modernization that we needed to start working on. And we had actually already started down the path of doing some modernization. And we had just, started moving into cloud platforms to actually provide some of our services. And over the last 2 years, we've actually have been able to expand some of those capabilities into cloud. And actually right now we're actively working on the stand up of a standardized cloud platform that we are looking to continue to deliver modernize applications and products against. In addition to that, we've also focused on not just the technology, but also on the people and how we're actually moving things away from the way that we used to do development, from project focus to more product focus, and are doing product outcomes that are delivering business outcomes to our business units within each of those respective offices. It's definitely been interesting as far as the global footprint, because that's something that is definitely unique to the State Department, where the rest of the federal government, there is a little bit of a different kind of a footprint in how we can leverage services, where, right now at Post, everything is pretty much localized, right? They do talk back here to the States, but from a cloud perspective, we have to take more of the more actual specific approach on how we are going to modernize services, because we have places around the world that just don't have good connectivity. And so how can we modernize capability, but still allow them to be able to do the actual work that they need to do at those locations if there's an actual interruption of internet services? And that's the work that we've been working on since I got here, really. We've been actually looking at the architecture, figuring out what the actual target architecture is that we're going to go to, modernizing the actual applications themselves, and not do a lift and shift, but actually look at how we can actually refactor and actually deploy those applications in a way that's as efficient as possible, but that can also support a hybrid deployment, where if we have to deploy it to a Post, we can do so, and it looks the same as if it was deployed into a cloud platform.
Excellent. It must be a daunting task to look at all those complex environments across the globe and have to deal with all those unique individual efforts, so to speak, and then get some sort of a homogeneous type of capability so that you can roll out those modern platforms. So hats off to what you all are doing over there, and the mission that you perform, extremely important. So well done there. Ed, how about at Splunk? You all are certainly on a tear over there. You're in a unique situation, because I don't think there's an agency out there at this point that's not using Splunk and using it very extensively. Give us a top line as to what you're seeing as far as the IT modernization movement.
So Luke, first of all, thanks for having us. Splunk is certainly doing well. I would share two examples, if I can, that come to mind that speak to Splunk's progress in modernization and in support of our federal customer base, right? So first, in September of 2024, the Splunk Cloud Platform achieved FedRAMP High authorization. As our federal customers know, the FedRAMP program is a government-wide program that provides a standardized approach to security, assessment, authorization, and continuous monitoring for the cloud products and services. With that said, Splunk has other products that have been granted FedRAMP authorization, and some are in progress. For example, Splunk SOAR achieved the FedRAMP moderate authorization in August of 2024, and Splunk Observability achieved a FedRAMP in progress designation on its way to becoming FedRAMP moderate. A second example would be in May of last year, Splunk was ranked as a software leader in security information and event management, or SIEM. That category and that designation was granted by Gartner, and for the 10th year in a row. As you know, Gartner is an independent research and advisory company. So one of the strengths cited by Gartner was Splunk's ability to perform federated searches from different raw data sources and across different third-party data stores. This is certainly one capability that adds to our federal customers' enterprise resilience, Luke.
I really do appreciate all the effort that Splunk is doing to enhance that technology, certainly get those high FedRAMP certifications, very important to actually both of these departments that are on this panel today, and many others.
Absolutely.
Scott, how about at Verizon? You all are in the catbird seat. You're seeing across the globe spectrum, if you will. Sure, you're probably working very closely with a couple of these agencies that are on this call. And yeah, tell us about the state of the state right now as to where Verizon is as far as enabling this architecture to allow these folks to modernize very quickly.
Sure. Thanks, Luke. So first off, let's have a sidebar of the word modernization.
Let's do it.
I want to be really clear. The word modernization is a really bad word to use. And the reason it's a bad word to use is that, Luke, if you and I are fortunate enough to still be out there 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about IT modernization. So it's an ongoing process. One of the things GSA
I'm going to
has
be
been,
talking about pickleball. I'm not going to be talking
oh,
about IT modernization.
well,
Come on.
you might be talking about you know what? You might be talking about pickleball modernization. Never know. That word's out there once it starts, right? So it's a, you know, it's a problematic word. GSA was looking ahead. They actually developed a contract, EIS, that really supports IT modernization movement. So that's a good thing, right? We can build on the momentum that organizations have. But I think we heard an interesting conversation in everybody so far, and that is the word cloud. When I started out in the cloud world, cloud meant hybrid, right? I have private cloud on my premise. I'm up in the cloud using collaboration, IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS services, right? So that was cloud. And then all of a sudden, a couple, 3-4 years ago, the concept became multi-cloud. And then the concept became polycloud. And who knows what it's going to become next. So the reality is everything's changing and evolving. The modernization is going to continue. It's going to be ongoing. What we're building at Verizon is a framework. We're building an ability for our organizations to work with us and have a framework so that when AI comes, when modernization remodernizes, or whatever it is, when modernization hits cycle 2, organizations are ready. They have the systems, they have the structure, they have the components they need to be successful. And in building and delivering that, they're ready for wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, wave 5, wave 6, wave 7, wave 8 of modernization.
A good framework and a good way to sort of reframe that particular symbolism, let's call it. Stretch, how about over at Axonius? You all are spread across a lot of these departments and agencies and a lot of the public and private sector at large. Give us a state-of-state top line. What are you all seeing as far as helping these organizations get to these enhanced capabilities?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. It's been interesting for me. My entire background has been cyber engineering, architecture, in the DoD space and the intelligence space my entire career. So coming to Axonius was the first vendor that I've got to work with. And so now being in the field CTO role, for me, it's been a lot. It's been great because I get to keep doing what I was doing before when I was supporting directly on network with federal customers. But now, because of the nature of what Axonius does, of how we connect to all existing infrastructure tools and security tools, we still get to be involved in those projects because we're not really competing with everyone. So if we think about, like, the mission that Verizon's doing, I mean, they have a whole lot that they have going on, anywhere from MSP, the services, to advising. I mean, there's a lot they're involved in. And then if you think about from Splunk as well, Splunk, there's so many use cases for Splunk. If we just start with some of the basic executive orders, M2131, the executive order for logging. There's examples for Axonius and helping the federal government on all the different use cases they have for modernization. And so why do I bring it up like that? Is we've been involved in a lot of different ways to kind of help get there. If we think of examples of, that example of logging that I gave from a Splunk aspect, one of the big things that we're helping with is we can immediately team up with Splunk and then show organizations where they're not logging, and then immediately we can work together and figure out where those key systems that they have no idea they're logging on and get those in. Another part of modernization that I'm really excited about is now Axonius is teaming with ECS on the CISA CDM program. So now we're helping the next layer of the CDM program modernize and streamline getting device details up to federal reporting a lot quicker than the program has in the history so far. So I could talk all day about different use cases of what I've seen across the field. Some of the programs and some of the things that the DoD and the Fed civilian side is doing is really exciting. So especially with the adoption of AI, I was at an Air Force conference not too long ago where they were talking about they were going to release, Nipper GPT to all of the airmen worldwide. And they're going to, and the leadership's going to mandate like, hey, this is part of your toolbox. This isn't replacing any jobs, but it's going to make you more efficient and streamline what you're already doing. The funny part of the conference that I thought was kind of funny, which all of the ears of the vendors perked up, is they made a statement that they're hoping their procurement teams can go from 12-month procurements down to 2-month procurements using Nipper GPT. So, the energy of the room perked up really quick. So it was kind of funny when they were talking about it during the conference.
Very common theme, a very common challenge. So we appreciate all the partnership you're doing with these other vendors as well. Let's talk about specific programs. Ed, I'm going to start with you at Splunk. You're citing a lot of different things that you're doing across the ecosystem. Perhaps you can zero in on one that really sort of enhanced the capability of that environment.
Sure. So Luke, there are several organizations with whom we have worked and successfully optimized their modernization efforts. One example I can give you is within the Department of Energy. The Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory is one of our accounts, and it is the location of the National Ignition Facility. This is a laser-based inertial confinement fusion research device. It creates nuclear fusion by heating and compressing a target filled with hydrogen atoms. Now, this isn't a physics conversation, but I can tell you that the lab's engineers use Splunk Enterprise and Splunk IT Service Intelligence to manage more than 66,000 control points at NIF. And these range from application data to sensors controlling laser voltage and temperature. So that's just one example, Luke.
An interesting one as well. If I think about Splunk and I think about the traditional use case, which was somewhat described earlier, and then you look at the things that you all have done to enhance that capability and really sort of take the roteness out of some of these areas and really focus on some of these higher order, much more value added type of capabilities. We certainly really appreciate everything that Splunk is doing to bring those type of capabilities into the ecosystem to allow these folks to really just focus on delivering. So that's much appreciated. We're going to take a short break and we're going to be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about IT modernization. Specifically, we're doing a round of questions on just citing examples of programs that are either in flight, completed, or are to be done. Louise, I'm gonna start with you. I know that there's several different things that you all have been doing on there, major programs underway, and give you the platform here to describe one of those.
Sure, thanks. So I think the one that I'm gonna talk about is online passport renewal, or OPR as we call it.
Mhm.
When I first got into this position, online passport renewal, the pilot, the first pilot, it actually was in flight. I actually have renewed my passport using that pilot at my previous job when I was at DHS. And when I got into consular affairs, there was we had some issues that were going on with that existing pilot. And so about I think it was March of 23, we paused it to take a look and figure out what's another approach on how we're going to address, how we can deliver online passport renewal, which was the goal of the pilot, to make the actual process paperless. And in order for us to do that, what we had to do was actually take a look at the entire problem and figure out, okay, how can we actually produce an actual product that is actually going to be able to deliver that capability, but avoid some of the issues that came up with the previous version. So what we did is we stood up a product team that I was actually comprised of the entire organization that I run, which is Consular Systems and Technology, all of the IT folks within the Bureau, but we also included the actual business unit as well. We actually incorporated a product owner from the Passport team that actually came in, that actually stood up with us on our daily cadences calls, excuse me, and actually worked with us on developing the online passport renewal, the OPR. In addition to that, we also brought in external folks to actually help us as well. The U.S. Digital Services actually came in to assist us on actually developing the actual OPR that we launched last year. And as part of that process, as we stood up the product team, which was a pilot, the first time it had ever been done inside of CA, we also included and ensured that as we were rolling the capability out, that we were doing it iteratively. As we rolled out testing, we invited the public to come in and actually provide us feedback on the actual front end that was being presented to them. And as we got that feedback, we would make iterative adjustments on the actual application itself. And then at the end, we ended up going into a phased approach of how we actually rolled it out, because there was a change management piece that we had to address on the back end with our passport adjudicators, where they were not impacted and their work was not affected. Because that was another thing with our previous version, was the year that rolled out was we had a lot of backlog in passports that year. So what we wanted to avoid was introducing any kind of friction or any kind of delay on our passport adjudicators on the back end. So by doing this phased approach, where we were actually doing a beta for approximately 3 months, where we were actually slowly allowing more and more applications to go through, number one, to validate that the actual system would be able to support the load, and number two, that we were not overloading the actual work on the back end. And we did that for a couple of months before we actually fully launched it in June. So the important thing, of course, was also ensuring, one, that we had the customer feedback from our customers that we're delivering online passport renewal to. Two is also ensuring that our back end customers were not impacted, and then also ensuring that we had a product owner that was from the business that was embedded with us as we were developing this first iteration of online passport renewal. And that's the other key part, that as we developed this product, it was iterative. There are certain categories of renewals that we're allowing through this first iteration, and the next one is going to continue to expand those capabilities as we move forward.
So input from the customers on both ends, right? The customer, the adjudicator, internal State Department employee, external folks that are going to be using it, lots of different interaction with various folks, including digital services, a soft launch, and it sounds like it's been very successful. You've iterated it 2 or 3 times, if I understand correctly, and you're off and running. An ideal classic way, I say classic way, of modernizing in a modern way.
Yes. Yeah. And the big thing on this, of course, also is we reduce paper, a lot of paper, because the process is all paper-based. And this was the first step on helping us to start continuing to reduce that paper.
Right. And a fully digital experience, a much more enhanced customer experience, a much more enhanced employee experience. So sounds like an absolute home run. Well done, Louise, and the entire State Department Council Affairs team on that one. Scott, let's go over to you and talk about a specific program that you would like to highlight.
Well, thanks, Luke. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Louise. I had to renew my passport, and I actually used the online system last summer, end of the summer. It was so easy and so simple. I want to say thank you. You saved me a lot of time and effort, and that was awesome. So, when we start talking about programs, there's a number of things, right? The reality of artificial intelligence is exploding. The reality of automation continues to explode. So when we look at, and I'll give you a specific program, we have a number of new data sources that they're building. They're moving data around. It's massive data. It's not little data. It's big, big, big data. It's literally moving data from IoT, or, well, without revealing what the customer's name is, right? And the focus of the customer, a number of IoT sensors. And IoT sensors producing constant data, there has to be an infrastructure that supports the flow of that information. And that's kind of what we have built, not kind of, it's actually what we built for them. A framework that allows them to move that IoT sensor data. But then the other side of data is it's got to be actionable. You got to be able to act on it quickly, because the data from a sensor is only as good as the relevance of the information. So acting quickly means that you have to have a framework, and that's what we've built, a beautiful framework that allows the customer to quickly make IoT data actionable. The other side is they can now make other data more and more actionable, which then helps them build and deliver their mission. Very simple.
Yeah, fantastic, and a unique way of approaching things, and we really do appreciate all the effort from your organization. We're going to go out to Brian Merrick, Department of Justice. I know you all are, you cited a lot of things in your top line intro there, Brian. I know you've got a lot of specific programs. Give us your cherry on top program that you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, no, thanks, Luke. And sort of similar to some of Louise's stories. I mean, we're using an iterative, agile approach for all of our app dev work. Especially as we're interacting with our cloud platforms. And really, that's been a real key to success, having tight integration with program owners, data owners, and really understanding the scope of the outcomes we were trying to achieve. But one thing I did want to highlight beyond that, I mean, there's the one piece of, you got to build the app and it's got to work, but then you got to be able to get to it. And part of the challenge that we've got, obviously, with law enforcement litigation is we're dealing with large volumes of data, a lot of IoT data, a lot of other complexities. Our old MPLS network, which was great back in the day, 20, 30 years ago when it was designed for batch processing, it's just not able to keep up with the demand. Now, obviously, we don't have the latency concerns that Department of State has, but it's still a challenge when we're talking about large volumes of data and trying to keep all of that moving. So one of the things that we were working on over the last couple of years, and we really made a lot of progress this last year, was leveraging a cloud broker as part of our zero trust strategy so that we could access the cloud more efficiently. So instead of sending everyone through the traditional MPLS TIC 2.0 sort of experience, we're able to leverage a cloud broker with TIC 3.0 capability, get the same telemetry for security, and now that user can interact directly with a cloud environment securely. And that's how enabled us to really move out at scale in terms of some of the access requirements that we have. Also, we don't necessarily have to drop a different network connection in when someone, say, stands up a task force somewhere. They can leverage that capability to be able to get to their assets in the cloud. So when we do work on site, especially in law enforcement with State Department and others, thinking of UNGA support and some of the other things we do for major events around the country, we're able to stand up those capabilities a lot faster. So we've now moved to the point where we've got over half of our users in this cloud broker, which is great. We're trying to do a big push this year to finish that up. And then that's integrating also with our identity solution and our endpoint solution as well. So it's giving us a better security posture. We're really seeing those differences. And then shortly, we're thinking we're going to be able to deprecate some of those legacy mechanisms. That's going to save us a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of management overhead. So, that's the other side of the coin, is getting to it. So something that we also had to focus on.
Right. And, laying those tracks down and getting that framework in place and then bolting the ID management or integrating the ID management, et cetera, so that these folks can just walk into that environment and know it's modern, know all these capabilities are available, don't have to wrestle with them. And then you all being able to peel off the legacy stuff off the back end and save all that money. Fantastic. I mean, that's like a dream come true. So well done for all the folks over there at JMD that are working hard on that. Stretch, let's talk about Axionis and a specific use case that you would like to highlight for the listening audience.
Oh, the specific use case.
A specific use case, the program, in other words, you all are stretched across, no pun intended, I put striped across all these various components and agencies, right? And I know you'd like to highlight a program that's really something that's going to be of interest to the listening audience, something they can identify with, right?
Yeah, there's a couple use cases that come to mind that I see a lot of. The top one that I'm seeing a lot of especially across the whole Fed civilian market, is the CISA CDM program. We have federal customers from all 6 of the defend groups. We're working with all 6 of the defend groups in the past. And we're really making a lot of positive changes, a streamlining of how agencies are doing CDM reporting and getting it up to layers B, C, and D a lot faster than it ever has before. Some other neat use cases that we're also seeing over on the DoD side of the house, we're getting involved with the DoD has the CMRS program, which is basically the DoD's version of the CDM program.
Right.
And we are now in the beginning stages of doing some modernization with that to where eventually Exonius will be deployed across the DoD to streamline getting, the collection of asset data all the way up back to DISA. Some really basic use cases for Exonius out of the box that, I've been here for 5 years this year. And every time I go to a new customer and work with them and go over some of the basic use cases for Exonius, it's just as exciting as the first customer I ever worked with. When I started at Exonius, we had 0 federal customers. I was brought on to start the Fed team. We now have over 50 unique logos across the Fed space, and it's been really exciting growth. And just if we talk about modernization, I kind of like what Scott said earlier. We're constantly talking about it. We're constantly talking about it. And 10 years from now, we're going to be modernizing. What we're doing today is going to be old, and we're going to be doing whatever the new buzzwords are. And if that's zero trust or AI or whatever that is, some of the things that don't change is the basics. And so some of the things that I really enjoy with Exonius is helping streamline organizations that have spent a long time that they're trying to work on these new initiatives. If it's an executive order for logging, if it's zero trust, whatever it is, a lot of times they struggle with these new initiatives because they've never got past the basics.
Right.
And the basics is, what are the unique devices in my environment? Who are the users of the environment? What's my installed software? And then how do I quantify my metrics to understand the unknown unknowns and turn them into known unknowns? And so some of my favorite basic use cases is when you have a complete view of your whole network, how can I do a basic search that says, show me all Windows devices or Linux devices not known to endpoint security, never been scanned by my vulnerability scanner? And then how can we go 3 levels deeper of the reasons why, and then pass that to our IT operations teams? Because there's nothing that drives an IT team nuts more than anything when someone says, hey, here's 20,000 devices not known to endpoint security. Here's this big pile. Go figure it out.
Absolutely, and you gotta start with the basics, and so many times we've been had with folks not focusing on the basics. All right, we're going to start talking about priorities. Brian Merrick, I'm going to ask you first. I know there's a lot of things in the job drawer you got to work on. Always like to get an understanding of the top 2 or 3 priorities that you all are focused on in 2025.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, everything we've been talking about so far. Also, kind of along the lines of identity, it's been a real challenge for us. And I know there's been some talk earlier in the conversation about hybrid, and that's a real challenge, right? We're kind of getting to that tipping point where modern tools that we're integrating are having a real challenge. When we integrate them with a complex on-prem environment, there are a lot of unintended second, third order effects when there's a configuration in one tool that impacts another. We've seen that really manifest itself within our existing collaboration platform. We have a hybrid environment with that, right? So we have underlying on-prem data stores that have to interact with cloud collaboration pieces and other things. So one of the things we're focused on right now is trying to integrate that collaboration platform with our actual main cloud-based identity solution. So by doing that, we're going to be able to then remove a lot of those dependencies to our old on-prem identity stores, which is just creating incredible complexity. Every time somebody moves in a different organization, or we're standing up a task force or working group, it creates a lot of chaos as we try to align the user with the correct information. in these different environments, since we have a multi-domain environment. So we're in train with that now. We've actually got one component already piloting successfully, which is great. And it's also going to give us a lot more flexibility when we need to provide multi-factor authentication for folks in different modalities. It's also going to help us in terms of making sure that we have a more streamlined identity process, which has been a real headache lately. We're anticipating finishing that actually in Q3 this year. So that's something that we're extremely excited about. Everybody's on board with that. All the components are very excited about as well, because it'll reduce complexity and workload for their service desks. We probably get 10, 20 requests around identity a week, and that just for our shop, and it certainly expands beyond that throughout the components. So that's a big one. Some of the other things that we've got cooking, we've got a lot of enterprise license agreements going for, we do a lot of litigation support. And some of the challenges we've got there are really around how we process large amounts of data and can afford to do that. There are great SaaS solutions out there. The problem is the cost of churning through that much data. So one of the things that we started, we're actually doing a commercial co-location. And so our thought is we want to experiment with cross-connecting from on-prem data in that location directly to cloud providers that are inside the environment. So that means we don't have to leave the environment. We don't have to tick the data. It's going to save a lot of money, and we can actually get faster processing times. So that's something we're hoping to pilot later this year if possible. We're just now getting the components stood up this month in that environment and going into production. So as we're moving from some of our old antiquated data centers. And then, so that's a couple of those other larger things. As we move forward, there's also, going to be quite a few other pieces that we try to dive into. But I think if we can get the identity piece sorted out, we've also, like I say, we've got our cloud underlayment platform set. We can start doing a better job at processing large amounts of data more affordably. I think we're going to be positioned for greater success as we move into a lot more programmatic changes that we're anticipating just around the need for greater efficiency. So I think we're in good shape there, but definitely a lot going on this year, a lot we're going to continue to do in cloud and certainly on the data side.
Love the idea of setting the table there. Scott, getting a little tight on time here. Number one priority for Verizon 2025 in your job jar?
Well, I mean, the easy one is empowering and supporting the mission of federal agencies we work with, right? But I won't give you the easy one. I also won't say, building a pickleball league. We're focused on, building again that platform that will empower agencies as they move into the future. I think one of the problems that we've seen, initially when we talk about cloud, right, we look at the beginning of cloud, the very first thing, right, back in 2010, 2011, the very first thing every single CIO said, it's not secure. People don't say that anymore in 2024. They realize cloud providers are attacked a lot. Telecom providers are attacked a lot. We're now starting to see this move towards how can we create, and I love what Brian was just talking about, creating an environment, a structure that fully supports and embraces a secure future state. So as they modernize, as agencies move down that path, they now have a secure place to start and a secure place to end.
Really do appreciate that. We're going to take another short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on the Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about IT modernization. We're talking about priorities for 2025. Louise, top 3 priorities for you at Consular Affairs in 2025.
Yeah, so the top 3 for us is really going to be continuing to focus on delivering our standardized platform that we're delivering our products against is going to be one of our top ones. The other one is, in addition to that, is also our continued journey from project to product, because that is a large effort that will basically enable us to continue down the IT modernization front. And that is bringing in our business units in as product owners as part of that journey. And then third is the technical debt that we're trying to dig out of. And that standardized platform is one of the ways that we're moving out of that technical debt, but there's a couple of other small projects that we're working on to address that as well.
And what are those projects? Just so the listening audience is aware.
A lot of those projects are going to be focused on the foundational architecture from a data perspective that we're looking at. Our challenge that we have right now, again, as I said, is that we have 240 posts worldwide. And right now, the way that we have that actual architecture with our applications being hub and spoke, where you have a client that talks to a server that is local that then replicates back. We're focusing on how we can actually pilot a capability that actually is able to move it away from the client. That's going to start us on that journey to be able to deliver it onto the platform.
Outstanding, and we're all behind you in your focus on those priorities, and we really do appreciate it. Stretch, top priority for you all in 2025.
I think 2025 top priority is really education, to let everyone know how they can do more with less. There's a lot of attention right now on government efficiency, and across the board from all of the agencies from DoD to Fed Civilian, I'm seeing a lot of top-notch engineers that are quickly leaving government service to go find other jobs because of uncertainty of their long-term career. And so what's happening in the space is IT organizations have less folks and they're trying to do more with less. So a top priority for us is to show them and help them from our experience across the board of how they can use tools like Exonius and others more efficiently, and how all the other tools they already own that Exonius connects to, how they can use those more efficiently as well.
Excellent. We really do appreciate that, and the ecosystem really appreciates that. Ed, top priority for Splunk 2025.
So look, I'd say a top priority for Splunk in 2025 is certainly capitalizing on the Cisco acquisition in terms of the Better Together story, right? So what we're talking about here is making available to our customers unparalleled visibility across network infrastructure and applications. Remember, these are the backbone components of any information technology environment. So our customers are getting modernization capabilities across their enterprise from the best in breed. Then it goes without saying, it's increasingly important that our customers utilize our Splunk artificial intelligence portfolio. Splunk has artificial intelligence, machine learning capabilities, both out of the box and customizable to address different use case examples. Therefore, it's important that our customers speak to us about their artificial intelligence requirements, use case examples, because one type of AI doesn't fit all solutions, right? So different AI types are available to address the customer's evolving technology needs.
Really do appreciate that. Well, we're going to take a little bit of a spin here, and I'm going to ask both Brian and Louise about lessons learned. You all are in the fight over there, doing some amazing things with your teams, but you always cross over these lessons learned. Brian, I'm going to start with you. You know what, if you could, impart some wisdom, if you will, experience on the community there. What's a number one lesson learned that you want them to come away with?
Yeah, I'd say sort of the biggest underpinning is that you can't change without changing. I've heard so many technologists say, I'm just going to buy this thing or that thing and plug it in. It just doesn't work like that anymore. We're at the point now where technologists really have to thoroughly understand the programs and missions that we support. And we've got to change the whole underlayment of how we operate. We've got to change the way we buy tech so that we're lining our budget up with consumption costs or accounting for per head license costs in our budget planning and our solutioning. We've got to change the way we do security. We've got to be able to use the tools that are available in native environments so that we can get that telemetry. We've got to develop in an agile and iterative way so that we're failing fast and that we're aligned closely with the customer. We got to change the way we get to our data, the way we manage our data, the way we think about it. It's no longer just part of a system. It's an asset in and of itself that really far outstrips the value of any one individual tool. So those are just some examples of things that we've really got to all collectively change our thinking and our operational stance on how we deliver.
In order to change, we need to change. I love the metaphor, and we really do appreciate that. Louise, you're in the middle of this fight, right? You've been in it hard for up to your waist for 2+ years. Top lesson learned that you'd like, all these other CIOs and communities to come away with.
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson learned is to not bite off more than you can chew, in the sense that, the biggest lessons learned that I've seen so far since I've been here is, take the iterative approach and focus on how you can deliver value iteratively. Because by trying to basically take an entire capability and try to change it without factoring in the back end users that are using it and the customers that are also using it as well, you want to focus small, knowing what your target is going to be at the end, and then just start delivering capability in chunks and ensuring that you're working again to make sure that there's no disruption between your front and your back end users that are using that capability. That's probably the biggest lessons learned.
Yeah, and for all you CIO communities out there, right? You completely transformed that organization. They were not used to operating like that, and you flipped it upside down, so to speak, and brought them into this modernized and a modern way type of capability. And look at the success there. It's been fantastic. All right, we're gonna have to wrap it up. We always like to end with this last question, which is fast forward, tell us what it's going to look like 2 to 3 years from now. Stretch, we're going to start with you at Axonius. 2 to 3 years from now, what's the demand signal going to look like? What's the focus going to be on from where you all sit?
2 to 3 years from now. Well, some of the focus for us 2 to 3 years from now is we're on the verge of finishing our FedRAMP moderate. Everything's done. People are already using it. It's just now in the queue for the FedRAMP PMO. But then we're immediately going to go into FedRAMP high and impact level 5 high. We got sponsors across the board for both. So for us as an organization, we're looking forward into how can we support with that. And we're really expanding into, improving what we already have. And, it was mentioned earlier how the cloud space is used a lot more. So we're doing a lot more with SaaS security posture management and seeing the configurations of not just the infrastructure, but the SaaS tools themselves, and then showing customers that, because you're subscribed to the SaaS tool, do the whole trust but verify. You can actually see how either the organization configured it or how your administrators are configuring it within their accreditation space. Then give that information directly to them so they can action those details.
Fantastic, and I'm sure we're all going to be enjoying that and really look forward to that. Scott, how about at Verizon? Is 6G going to be ubiquitous out there? Or it's all going to be a wireless type of capability. Landlines are gone, and it's just high speed all the time everywhere we look. What can we expect 2 to 3 years from now?
Well, 2 to 3 years from now, I think what you're going to see, obviously 6G is a standard that has not been ratified yet. So you're probably not going to see, you might see at the very end of that time period, the beginning of what is 6G.
Sure.
But the reality is this, right? In order to support 5G, a telecommunications company has to have a fiber network or a landline network connecting all those towers together. So you're not going to see a shift away. I think what you're going to see is a move towards mission critical networks, and the mission critical networks will remain on a traditional wireline, will remain that traditional structure. That's probably where your AI is going to sit. That's probably where you're going to have your most secure assets. Your very most secure assets will sit in an air gap network where there is no connectivity to it. You physically have to go into a room, pass through 18 barriers, sit down at a computer desk, get the information, not be able to take it out of that room. That's probably your most secure, but the rest of your really secure information will exist wherever you need to put it, be it an IL5, IL6 infrastructure, FedRAMP High, wherever that is, all connected and built together in a way that you can easily transition from one location to the other, to easily get to anything you need to operate your mission. So The future, as the past was, is likely to be, how do I do better connectivity?
Appreciate that. Ed, how about at Splunk? You referenced the Cisco merger, better together. 2 to 3 years from now, that'll be sort of completely fused together, I would imagine, at whatever level that's going to be. But what's the expectation of the types of capabilities that the user base will be looking for, and sort of what's in the petri dish these days?
So look, you make a great point. We have to look forward, and Splunk is here to support the mission of our federal customers. So as such, our products and services need to form consistent capabilities where possible, like cloud offerings, but also be adaptive and resilient in terms of modernization over the next 2 to 5 years. For example, Splunk is integrating AI across the product portfolio, but also with Cisco strategic investments, right? Cisco has a substantial footprint in networking and network visibility that, in collaboration with Splunk, gives a robust and comprehensive observability capability to our federal customers. Plus, Splunk acquisition by Cisco is gathering momentum along the lines of sharing institutional knowledge. This means we have access to both Cisco and Splunk federal account teams and partners that are able to share institutional knowledge about customers' IT architecture. So Splunk looks to leverage multiple vantage points to continue the momentum of resilient and relevant IT modernization.
We really do appreciate that. And we look forward to that better together joint capability that will impart that type of philosophy and capability across the ecosystem. It's going to be spectacular, I'm sure. Louise, 2 to 3 years from now, I'm a foreign service officer, out in one of these consulates. I'm dealing with visas. I'm dealing with, whatever it is. You all have been in the process of flipping around how you deliver capabilities, right? You've got sort of that underway. You just laid out an architecture which is significant. How far along do you think you'll be in that type of capability? And what's that going to look like to me as the foreign service officer out there? What can I expect?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking about just like a vision of where I expect this to be in 2 to 5 years, right?
Right.
I mean, the goal is for us to have, those seamless, secure, transparent digital services to our public customers. But in addition to that, I want to be able to provide capability from any device, anywhere, at any time to our end users that are worldwide, right, at those locations around the globe. That's the goal. As far as how far I think we'll be in the next 2 to 5 years, I think we'll make some really good progress. But it's going to take us some time because there is a lot of things that we're going to have to kind of work through, as I mentioned, the technical debt. But I think I'm very confident on our ability to kind of to get there on those different pieces. And I think by the end of 5 years, we'll be well on our way.
You had an enormous technical debt out there that you've identified. You've also been able to focus on a new way of modernizing your environments, right? With the success of OPR. I would imagine you'll keep doing that sort of shampoo, rinse, and repeat for
Yes.
visas and some of these other capabilities, sort of that customer experience enhancement out into the public square.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. And the thing is that as we continue to do so, right, we're continuing to do that on the passport front. We've been working again on our other portfolios as well. Of course, with the OPR success, we're continuing to iterate and we're continuing to actually deploy out capabilities. I mentioned the iterative approach. The front end was the first piece. The next piece is going to be what we call, the hub of where those adjudicators work, which is where they're actually adjudicating those passports. That's the next phase of where we're kind of focusing on the actual modernization journey that for us to get to that vision.
It sounds like we're closing in, if you will, on the day when the only interaction you do with the State Department, whether it's a visa, a passport, et cetera, is going to be completely electronic and completely digital, which is fantastic. I know that's a little ways away, but we look forward to that. Appreciate that and everything that you're doing over there. Brian, take us home. Fast forward, you have a mighty amount of initiatives in front of you. You're on a roll over there. 2 to 3 years from now, You've gotten some of that technical debt behind you. What's that going to look like as I walk in there as a brand spanking new engineer getting ready to start, implementing some type of capability? What's that environment going to look like?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think just like Luis was saying, we're going to have a lot more digital natives in our workplace. And that expectation for immediate connectivity to data they need is just going to be even higher, especially in law enforcement. So I think we're going to end up with a lot more edge processing, a more ubiquitous data platform that we can leverage for folks to be able to access the data they need. We're going to see almost every SaaS or APaaS based tool have AI in it. And the expectation is going to be that if you don't have cloud, you're going to have a hard time getting your job done. So I think we're going to see a lot more penetration of that, and also the costs for on-prem are just going to become unsustainable by then. So we're really going to have to make sure that we're ahead of the power curve to serve our digital customers.
No question about that, and we really look forward to it. And really, once again, want to thank you for all you're doing and all the entire panel is doing, and taking the time out of your busy schedules today to join us on this program. I'd also like to thank the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience that tune in every single month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.